Ta-da. All right, today, as I said, we're going to finish up with applicant screening. Come on. Okay, here's some common errors and omissions and falsifications in an applicant's on an application form. Sometimes they actually forget to sign the thing. You want to check that. Now, the application date is very important. The applicant is only responsible for information they provide you up to the date of the application. Anything that occurs after that is outside what you can ask for. If you invite an applicant to an interview, you can only ask them about things that happened at the time they applied or before. You can't ask them about the intervening time, okay? Something to keep in mind. Education. Approximately 5% of all professional applicants falsify some aspect of their educational background. They do things like list schools but omit the dates of attendance. That's not really a falsification. They just get old like me and forget when they graduated. Or they list diploma mills. You see them all the time on the late night TV show. We can get you a bachelor's degree in nuclear science. All you do is send in a box top and $2. So you want to be on the lookout for those type of things. Or they'll even make up schools and don't even tell you where the schools are at. University of Wiesbaden, somewhere in Europe, okay? Or they'll actually list recognized schools where they never attended, or claim they graduated from schools where they attended for a short time but really didn't complete the program. And the biggie is they'll actually assume the name and degree of a bona fide graduate. They'll research the classes that are graduated for their age group, and they will submit that as they'll change their name, get a false identity, and try to get a job as a nuclear scientist whenever they never even graduated high school. That's more frequent than you would think possible, but it does happen. Okay, some of the things you want to look at is criminal records. You can't discriminate if they went to jail. Remember we said you can't ask them if they've ever been arrested, but you can ask them if they've been convicted of a crime. You want to look at that. If they leave it unanswered, you want to ask about that during the interview process. Or they have employment gaps. They simply forget to list employment. Maybe they left a company under a cloud. They finally got fed up and told their boss to take a hike. And they know they're not going to get a good reference. They'll leave that one out. But you want to ask about it. Where were you working from 2002 till 2004? You want to look at people who say they had their own company or are working for an aunt, an uncle, their dad, their mom, whatever, and make sure they were actually employed there doing work that they said they were doing, okay? This is a common practice whenever they're trying to cover the gap in their employment history. So you want to look at that and follow up on it. The good news is we're restricted on what we can ask before we give them a job offer. But once we make them an offer, we can fill in the blanks. No restriction on what can be asked once an offer of employment has been made. Resume should never be taken in lieu of an application. You should always have them fill out an application in detail. However, it is a good source of information to build your investigation on. So you want to keep that, okay, and review it like you would an application. Now we've got the applicant in, we're thinking about hiring, we need to do our pre-employment investigation. This is called a background investigation. The purpose of the background investigation is to verify the accuracy and completeness of a candidate statement. So the first step is to get the application, look at it, make notes of any omissions or suspect items that you want to follow through with. You must develop relevant information concerning the candidate. By relevant, I mean it has to apply towards the position they are seeking a job in, okay? If they are a plumber and you're going to hire them as a maintenance guy doing plumbing in your facility, you don't want to know about their financials, okay, so much. You want to know things like the companies they work for, how good were they, any employee reviews that you can get a hold of, things of this nature. But it has to be relevant to the position. All the information on an application is relevant to the position because you've built this from your job analysis and your job description, and now you have the application. It's also used to determine the candidate's suitability for employment. If you're hiring for a plumber position, you can pretty much screen out the carpenters, the nuclear scientists, and the meth lab operators, okay? As a general rule, you want to complete your background investigation before you give them a job offer. Now, sometimes you have to have something filled really quickly. You give them a contingent job offer saying you have to jump through these hoops before you can be fully qualified to stay on the job. There's usually a probationary period, sometimes 60 days, 90 days, or 120 days. If something comes, if you hire them before you complete your background investigation, you tell them up front, we're going to complete our investigation. You're on probation for this amount of time until we complete our investigation. If something disqualifies you, is found during the investigation, you're going to be shown the door. Or you're going to be given an opportunity to correct it, whatever it is. Security officers should have input on how the application form is built and what specific information you're looking for. Specifically, residencies, you want to go back 5 years, employment 5 years, you want to know about criminal history, if any, you want to know about dismissals for cause, things of this nature. Okay, so you want to put those types of things on an application. Now, if y'all all think back to whenever you signed up for your current position, wherever it is, you saw certain questions that, you know, have you ever been dismissed for cause? That's a legitimate question, okay? It's generally not a disqualifier, but you'll see it on there, and that's a good security officer that got that question on there. Application forms reveal substantial information pertinent to the investigation. Some key examples are names and variations of names. Why is that important? Well, you want to know if he's been known by an alias somewhere. If his name is Rockaway and he says he goes by Rocky, you want to know that. So whenever you introduce him around, this is Rocky. You want to know his citizenship. Is he authorized to work where you have your facility at? Generally 5 years, okay, to answer that question. It also helps to know if he has he or she has military background, and what training they bring to the position. You're welcome. You want to get their references, both professional references and personal references. Now, some people only go for professional references because they're more concerned about the job, but a hiring manager wants to talk to personal references so they know if this person's a good fit, their personality, their work ethic, things that you can find out about how they socialize with other people. It's important to know if they will fit into your team. So you want both professional references and you want to check personal references. In our business, we want to know about any security clearances, previous education, okay. A lot of us are former military, so we have a lot of former military education that is not college or formal education, but we learned a lot that we can bring to a job. As I said, employment history is up there. Convictions, you can ask about convictions, criminal convictions. And organizational affiliation. I am personally a member of ASIS, or American Society for Industrial Security. That went on my application. I'm very proud of it. There was some affiliations you probably don't want to put on a job application, like Hells Angels or Banditos or something like that. So that's part of your background investigation. And you can get that information from the personal references too. Well, how do you know the individual? Oh, we met at a bike rally down in Florida, and you know he's with Diablos and I'm with Hells Angels. Oh, good to know. And you want to check the residencies. As with employments, you want to go back about 5 years to make sure they show stability. They're not moving around a lot. And this is a great place to talk to neighbors that knew them. Okay? How were they as neighbors? Will they fit into my team? What other information can I get? Now remember, you're looking at not only hiring this person for a job, but how well suited they are to fit in to that job and that job team. So all of this is relevant information. You don't want to ask about who he or she is dating, whether they're cheating on their spouse or anything like that, because that's really not relevant to the job. Okay? So keep the scope of your investigation focused on, can they do the job? Will they fit into the team? And are they likely to steal from me? That's all you need to do. Okay? All right. Focus of the background investigation. Investigative coverage should include all or part of the following, depending on the job requirements. Check any available local security indices. You know, have they been booted out for their clearance? You know, we go to JPAS, see if they had a clearance and they lost it. Police files to ascertain derogatory information. Now, for these two right here, the information must be publicly available and lawfully obtained. You can get a criminal history check through your local police department. That is public information. Now, if there were arrests on that, okay, but no convictions, you can't ask about arrest. You can only ask about convictions. There it is right there, criminal history. Indicates a conviction record. The details must be verified. If he says he was arrested and convicted of robbery, but it turns out he was arrested and convicted of murder, might impact your hiring decision. Okay? And it also goes to his integrity and honesty. He lied about it only being robbery and it was murder. Okay? At least 5 consecutive immediately preceding years of employment and non-employment should be verified. If they were unemployed, you want to double check, make sure they're unemployed. Any gaps in employment more than 30 days should be explained. Okay. You want to check their claimed residencies for that same period and make sure that they were living at that house when they were working at that other job, things of this nature. Criminal court records should be checked. List and develop personal references should be interviewed. Now, I always strongly encourage you to go out and have a face-to-face interview with all the references, all the people you're dealing with when you're checking out the background. We all know that we can, everybody to some extent can read body language, pick up on indicators of lying and things of this nature. So it is better to have a face-to-face interview with these people. Okay? So you can pick up on that. We've all done phone interviews. We get the same blah, 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 and it's kind of bland. We get no social indicators is what I'm saying. All education requirements for the position should be verified. If you're looking for a bachelor's in electrical engineering, this guy's a master's in engineering, verify his master's degree, move on. You want to interview former employees and work associates. How were they to work? Did they work well as part of the team? Things of this nature. Remember, we're not just the job, but the team. We're trying to fit them into our organization. And I'm going to say this right here and right now. The reason is if they fit well into your team and they fit the job, there is less likelihood they're going to bail on you and walk out the door with all your proprietary information, because they're going to be happy in your team. They're going to be productive in your team. They're going to get praised for their work in their team. Remember, we talked about discipline and all this other good stuff previously. The whole idea behind this is once you get a qualified candidate in and they are hired, they're now part of your team, you want to grow and keep them in your team for as long as possible. Because as soon as that person walks out the door, a lot of your corporate knowledge walks out with them. All your processes, protocols, regulations, everything. They may be as honest as the day is long, but sometimes whenever they're 2 years from now, when they're working at another job, they say, well, whenever I was at so-and-so, we did it this way, and that saved us money. So now your competition is doing it your way and saving money, and they're beating you out on cost. The whole goal is to get a good qualified candidate in here, get them hired, make them happy, keep them as long as possible. Ta-da! That way your secrets don't walk out the door. Personnel, contact rather than telephone. Oh, I jumped ahead again. Like I said, you want to get face-to-face with whoever you're interviewing. Get that warm, fuzzy feeling from them just telling you everything honestly, and then you can make note of it and move on. Standards for investigation. You have to set the corporate standards for doing investigations. I don't care what kind of investigation it is. The information sought must be developed for being relevant to the hiring decision. It must be reliable. If you have, that means good probability of being correct. If you receive unfavorable information during your investigation, it must be confirmed by at least one other source. Okay? You can't just have one derogatory entry in there and let it go. It's got to be verified and validated. Somebody tells you, yeah, he busted up this bar, got busted, and he had to spend the night in jail for destruction of private property. You want to wander down to the police department and say, hey, was this guy arrested? Was he convicted? Did he pay a fine? Whatever, and get that corroborating evidence. Now, you've done your due diligence. You've gone out and done your investigation. You've got a solid investigative package sitting in front of you. What do you do with it? You turn it over to some senior supervisor who is responsible for reviewing your investigation. Not necessarily the security director, but probably HR, more than likely, the director of HR or the hiring manager for that position. They will review the investigation along with all the other investigations you have done and balance what you have told them against their needs and against the other candidates and make a decision based on what you've turned into them. Okay? See how that works? Okay. Not coming together yet, but it will. Contract investigative agencies. If you choose to go to an outside source for your investigation, most companies do this nowadays because it's more cost effective. We don't have investigators sitting around cooling their heels until we have to hire somebody. There's certain things you have to establish with this contract investigative agency. You should have a contract with them, be in writing, and you should outline your rules and regulations for doing your background investigations. It has to be the reason for the report, the nature of the investigation, and the basis for pricing the reports. If they're just doing a single scope background investigation, you got your price for that. If they're doing an in-depth for a position of trust, it's going to cost a little bit more. And you have to tell them how you want them to document their time. Okay? If we were doing the investigation, we know we want to sit down in front of our references and have it face-to-face. They have to account for that. Also, you want to make sure that this agency does not represent themselves as your company. They have to represent themselves doing an investigation for your company. But they cannot sit there and say, hey, we're Acme Tire Company doing an investigation into so-and-so. They have to say, I'm Smith's investigation, working on behalf of Acme Tire Company, and we're checking it. We're doing an investigation, background investigation on Tim Smith to see if he can get hired. Okay. Whenever you're doing an interview, and whether it's you or a contract agency, the identity, telephone number, and mailing address of your organization, and specifically who in your organization the investigative report goes to, has to be delivered to whoever you're interviewing and talking to. So, ta-da, there you go. All right, one other thing before we leave investigations. If you're going to be conducting a background investigation on a potential employee, okay, or even a current employee, do we have to tell them we're doing it? Best guess, people.
No.
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 Well, that wasn't the best guess. It is, yes, you do have to tell them, especially if you're going to be, if they're trying to get hired. Yeah, you do have to tell them that there's an investigation, what the investigation is for. And in the case of a new applicant, it's for background investigation for hiring. In the case of an employee, you have to tell them why they're being investigated, for what incident. So yes, you don't hide it from anybody that you're investigating them.
So point of clarity.
The caveat on this is if you're doing an undercover investigation into criminal activity. Remember we had our undercover officer? We're not going to run up to the bad guys and tell them, we're talking about administrative investigations here. So if you're doing a criminal investigation, you're not going to inform them. If you're doing an administrative investigation, like background investigations or wrongdoing at the company, you know, like somebody punched somebody out, we're going to investigate that. Hey, you punched Joe out, we're going to have to investigate that. Administrative, rule breaking and stuff like that. Criminal investigations, no, we don't have to inform the bad guys that we're investigating. That just kind of tips them off. So you see the two? Remember we talked about criminal investigation, administrative investigation? Poorly phrased question on my part. In an administrative investigation, the answer is yes, we have to inform them. Criminal, no. You guys almost caught me, but I talked too fast.
Point of clarity, Roy.
Yeah.
So for investigations, particularly what's conducted on federal employees and contractors, there are provisions for persons who hold top secret, secret, confidential, whatever your investigation is.
Mm-hmm.
There are provisions that require your investigation to be ongoing as a condition of employment. So
Absolutely.
many of those personnel receive that notice in the initial that part of your employment is contingent on you maintaining your security eligibility. So thus, their investigations will be ongoing for the life of their employment or until such time something else happens.
That's absolutely correct. There are 2 points I want to make here on that one. Normally in the civilian world, we don't have that. And remember, this is geared towards civilian security professionals. Very rarely will you see that. However, there are exceptions, and that is for financial and lifestyle investigations, which we'll talk about here in just a minute, where you inform them that they're going to get one prior to hiring and they're going to get one every 18 months. But remember, we get to set the scope of each of these investigations. The federal government is pretty much an exception to whatever laws they write. They can do whatever they want. They don't have to follow the same labor laws we do, okay? They don't even have to notify people that the continued eligibility for employment would require an annual or 18-month investigation or every 2 years, whatever it is. So, but keep in mind that whenever we're talking here, if we're doing an administrative investigation, we have to notify them both verbally and in writing. Ta-da. The government does it in the employee contract. Ta-da. Contractors who work or are supplying contractors to the government do it in the employee contract. There's exemptions there. Okay? But in the civilian world, normally we have to notify them whenever we start off an investigation, what the scope of the investigation is, and the boundaries of the investigation. Okay? Moving on, let's talk about employee test. There are certain times you can use testing to narrow down candidates for a position. Some types of things we can use are like performance or work sample tests. If you're hiring somebody for a welder, you can have them go out to the shop, see if they're familiar with the particular type of welding machine that you're using, can gauge the materials and properly weld them so that they meet specifications. You can even take that test sample, take it to a lab, have it examined, make sure it is good to go. So that is performance or work sample task. Ability tests such as typing test, reading test. If you want to, if you're hiring a facility engineer, hand him a broom and see if he can sweep a floor. Okay? Aptitude tests, the ability to learn. Will they be able to learn our rules, regulations? Will they be able to learn our bookkeeping methods? So you can give them tests on that.
Hold on.
You can also conduct personality inventory tests, like the Minnesota Monthly Phasic 2, to see if these guys have any. I took this and they told me I had problems with authority. I told them to stop pushing me around. And the Briggs test is another one. You can also do honesty and integrity test. So those are psychological surveys that you can do. I actually built one in college and I failed it. And I wrote the damn thing. Other types of testing, medical examination. You have to be careful here. Before you can do a medical exam, they have to have the job offer in hand, okay? It has to be made, a job offer has to be made to the candidate. But if you're working in certain industries where you're going to be putting these people into a toxic or dangerous environment, you need to get a medical exam to get a baseline, because you want to follow that, and you're going to require they do medical exams every, whatever, 3, 6, 8, 10 months so that you can track their baseline. Especially if you're working in an environment like a shipyard where there's asbestos, or in a paint factory where there's lead, you want to put them on a medical monitoring program. Okay? And they're aware of this whenever you hire them. Drug testing, before or after a job offer. Before. Always. You can get away with it. Polygraph testing. Oh, man. You know, there are a lot of little fly-by-night polygraph companies out there that just kind of circumvent the law. The Employee Polygraph Protection Act prohibits most private employers from using polygraph tests to screen job candidates. Job candidates. The exceptions are those working in certain security services or the lawful manufacturing and distribution of controlled substances. Okay? However, you can use polygraph testing as an integrity program after they have the job. Can't be used to prevent them from getting the job, but it can be used after they've been employed. Everybody get that? All right. Moving right along. Financial and lifestyle inquiry. These investigations should be conducted during the initial background investigation and every 18 months thereafter. Now, we've seen news reports forever about the little budget secretary in these little municipalities that's living the grand lifestyle and took X million dollars from these little civil organizations or these small companies, and nobody noticed that she's living in a mansion in a town of 900 people. So that's what you do financial and lifestyle inquiries for, to make sure this person who has controls over assets, funds, whatever, is not pilfering from you. Any anomalies found should be investigated thoroughly, including interviewing the subject of the inquiry. Okay? Now, whenever we say lifestyle, we're talking about how their lifestyle fits into what is their known pay level. If you're making $80,000 a year and you got a 300-foot yacht, I would call that an anomaly. Okay, are you living within your means is what the lifestyle is. Do you have 50 cars parked in your front yard and they're all registered to you, but you're only making $45,000 a year? Either you're running a used car lot on the side or you're pilfering. Okay? Orientation for new employees. The orientation program should be designed to familiarize the new employee with the organization's culture, goals, objectives, procedures, and the rules. Remember, we've talked over and over again. You can't discipline somebody for not knowing the rules. This is where you teach them. This process also identifies requirements for employees to protect assets and to play a role in loss prevention. Hey, you're part of the security team now. These are your roles under the security team. Security awareness. Security awareness is a state of mind. The purpose of security awareness is to understand the relationship between security and a successful operation. Here's how security helps us maintain our profits and how we get the product safely out the door and protect it until it gets into the consumer's hands. This is how security works with us. And because of this, the benefits from this is we have less losses, we lose less money, so we can roll that money back into the company and take care of our employees. We're going to have that big 4th of July picnic this year because we made a profit. Security awareness also allows each individual to know their personal obligation under the security program. If they see something, they need to report it, and more importantly, who to report it to. Okay? It also helps you comply with legal and regulatory requirements, okay, and comply with any contractual obligations. Ta-da! Remember that. Okay. Exit interviews. Anybody here have ever had an exit interview?
No.
Am I the only one?
Never had one.
I've had several. An exit interview is a valuable tool for the following reasons. One, gives the employee an opportunity to list any grievances or issues they've had with your company. Okay. It also gives you an opportunity to address those issues and try to amend those grievances. You don't want somebody mad walking out the door because they probably got your trade secrets in their hip pocket when they're going. Okay? If we get to the exit interview and they have grievances and issues, there's a supervisor y'all need to be looking at. Yeah, all right? Management often learns the problems not previously known. You're on your way out the door. You know, I've been complaining to my supervisor for 6 months that this machine is about to go down. And this is what I've been telling him. Well, now management knows. We've jumped over to that supervisor, the shift supervisor. We're talking to the division manager now, and he's going, really? Well, I'll jump on that because if it breaks down, I'm going to lose X amount of dollars. It helps reduce loss when a checklist is used to recover the company property. Like whenever I check out a bowhead, if and when I ever do, I've got a checklist. One, they gave it to me, and every time I get something from the company, they add it to the list. And we can go over that list together and make sure I turned in everything, a laptop, a key card, a key to the office, a cell phone, whatever it is that you've been issued for your job. So you need that exit interview. Okay, all right, there's my laptop, there's my 2 key cards, there's my cell phone, everything's turned in. I won't send you a bill and I won't deduct it from your final paycheck. It's used to remind departing employees of legal obligations to protect trade secrets or confidential records. They also say non-compete agreements, but non-compete agreements, depending on what state you're in, are enforceable, may not be enforceable. So, but non-disclosure agreements are totally enforceable. All right. All right. Any questions on that? Workplace violence. ASIS says workplace violence is the #1 cause of workplace violence. Really? Okay. Protection method is to have threat management. Okay. A good example of threat management came out in the movie theater shootings in Aurora, Colorado. The school had a threat management team. It followed their protocols, and unfortunately, all they could do was get him off campus. Once he was off the school, we had no mass shootings at school, but they left him flapping in the breeze. There was a professor involved with his evaluation that went to a police officer, made her concerns known to him, and the ball kind of got dropped. One of the things we want to do with our threat management team is to establish what is the threat, how we're going to respond to the threat. Are we going to terminate the individual, or are we going to help the individual get help, or whatever it is? We're going to put our roles and responsibilities down in writing. First stop on this, again, is pre-employment screening. Somebody just out of Alcatraz who was there for being a serial murderer might not want to hire and put him on the production team down on the factory floor. I'm just saying, it's your company, you're the security director, you do what trips your trigger, but I wouldn't do it. The other thing we can do is access control. A lot of the workplace violence happens with somebody from outside the facility getting in because they have a personal grievance with somebody in that facility. Now, it can be anything. I think the most recent one I heard of is the estranged boyfriend went into a hairdressing shop, shot not only his now ex-girlfriend, but her boss too. So access control and other security measures need to be in place to prevent this. We're talking about if one of your employees has an ex, or their husband has gone off on a loony trip and not expected back anytime soon, we need to let security know that these people are not granted access to the facilities. Okay? We need to protect the individual. Remember, part of our job as security professional is to protect our employees as well. Okay? So we need to have access control measures in place, very rigid, and especially if we have somebody that is threatening one of our employees, we need to know about it and keep them on the barred list. You can also have things like magnetometers, hand wands, whatever it takes to make sure nobody brings anything bad into your facility. Okay? And you can back this up with a fully disseminated written policy statement and reporting processes. Now, if Mary Smith is being threatened by her ex-husband to kill her or strangle her, and she has a restraining order against him, she should be able to come to you and say, hey, I have a restraining order, this is what he's done, this is what he's doing, here's a photograph of him. And your written policy should cover how you handle that. I'm going to notify the gate guard, I'm going to notify the building guard, and I'm going to notify the patrols to keep on the lookout for this guy, keep him out of the facility. And you need to institute incident management team. If something does go bad, it goes south, how do you handle it? It's just like your emergency planning. Do you have a plan for this? Do you have a notification system to put everybody in lockdown? You know, do you have a policy for shelter in place. What are your policies? You need to get that disseminated. And then let the emergency management team respond to the incident and contain it. And part of that is establishing guidelines for threat and incident management. Now, remember, go back to our emergency planning. We've identified who's going to handle the disaster, because this is going to be a disaster. Trust me. Who's going to communicate to the press? Who's going to work with the local authorities? Who's going to handle the investigation? And who's going to write the after-action report? All that's written down in your guidelines and your reporting procedures. Okay, I've talked myself into a stupor here. I think that's it. Any questions on what we covered today? Okay, everybody reach over, shake the guy next to you, wake up. Wake up. Okay, the good news is the next one is executive protection. This is one everybody sits through personal security for, and I've beefed it up a little bit and made it a little bit more interesting. We will jump into this. I had scheduled it for Monday, but Stephen reminded me that Monday's a federal holiday, so I'll either do it next Wednesday, or if enough of you want to jump in, hell, I'll do it Monday and Wednesday if y'all want. I don't care. So let Stephen know what y'all would like to do. We are now, with this next one, we're going to be finishing up our 5th of 8 domains. It gets harder from here. So let me know whenever y'all want to jump on this, and we will rock on. Any questions? Comments? Royce, you're nuts. Oh, that was me. Okay. Well, y'all have an excellent weekend. Try not to freeze to death out there.
Thank you, Royce.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Roy.
Bye-bye.